Welcome to the Produce Moms Podcast, where we believe there is a produce mom in all of us. I'm Lori Taylor, founder and CEO of the Produce Moms. For 10 years, I sold fresh produce to over 300 grocery stores in the U.S. And today, my team and I are fully focused on inspiring people to eat more fruits and vegetables. This show is just one of the ways that we hope to inspire you and your family to eat more produce and live a better life. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, join our community of almost 40,000 in all 50 states and over 30 countries by visiting theproducemoms.com/subscribe. And be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes. Thanks for being here. Enjoy today's show. Welcome back, everyone. Today is a really special edition of the Produce Moms Podcast. They're all special, but let me tell you, today we are all going to learn a lot. You know, the conversation about plastics and what we are going to do as a produce industry at large to, more mindfully attack packaging innovation and what we're going to do with plastic from a consumer level. It's truly one of the top inquiries that we receive at theproducemoms.com from our consumer followers. And that is really what led me to today's guest. Our guest today is Dave Beck. He is the National Sales Director at rPlanet Earth, located in Vernon, California. And, Dave was introduced to me by our brand partners at NatureRipe. Again, a company that's very dedicated to sustainability, as all of our, as all of our followers at the Produce Moms know. You've probably seen us cover a lot of the work that they're doing in sustainability. And rPlanet Earth is part of that process with the NatureRipe team. They've, Dave and his colleagues at rPlanet Earth have, really mentored and educated and opened the eyes of not just NatureRipe, but many of the growers and the brands of the produce department. So it's a great honor and pleasure to welcome Dave to the Produce Moms Podcast today. And you guys, we are all going to learn so much. So Dave, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you very much, Lori. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Oh, thank you. So, I'm guessing most of our listeners aren't familiar with rPlanet Earth. I'm sure that most of them were nodding their head in that intro saying, yeah, I want to know how to reduce plastic in my own household. And, people are starting to see the shift and the focus of packaging innovation within the industry and throughout the entire grocery store, but especially the produce department. So, I definitely have some specific questions for you today, but I think we really just need to start with your background and what you actually do at rPlanet Earth.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I've been in food packaging for over 30 years and various materials, whether it was plastic or paper or foam products, various, different plastic polymers and all the different types of food packaging. I've been in some leadership roles in sales and marketing and product development. So this has pretty much been my life the last 34 years or so. And the first 20 years or so, I was in more of the food service disposable side. So everybody's familiar, with cups and plates and cutlery and things that are used in takeout and some of the fast food restaurants and things like that. And then the last 10 plus years, I really got heavily involved in more of the retail produce, deli, and bakery packaging, that goes into supermarkets and is packed by different, processors and growers. So really have enjoyed the last 10 years of getting into that. But I also knew that obviously sustainable packaging has been a topic for years and years and years. And what has happened in the past is there were a lot of different materials developed or different ideas or concepts developed, but many times they had a much higher cost. And so it was very hard for anything to catch hold and really make a difference in the marketplace. So when I saw this opportunity with rPlanet Earth as a startup, I just fell in love with the idea and actually a way to hopefully give back a little bit to the industry that's been very good to me.
That's great. So tell us a little bit more about, what you do at rPlanet Earth. I mean, what is the process?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that got me really convinced is I've always known for the last 25 plus years that recycling was really the answer. I've seen things about composting, biodegradability, different things, and all those things are good. But as far as, what I thought could really make a difference was just the actual recycling of a product and putting it back into the same value. a lot of plastic that's recycled today may get downcycled into carpet fibers and different things like that, which is great. But how do we really get something that could be, come from a bottle or a container and actually be made back into a bottle and a container? So the process at rPlanet Earth basically is a vertically integrated recycling and manufacturing process under one roof. We take in the curbside collected PET, which is a type of plastic that most people are familiar with for that's plastic bottles, or say in a clear 2-liter bottle of Coke or Pepsi. That's that material that we take in, and basically we sort out everything that's not that. And there's also ways to dispose of that. Those byproducts get sold off into other industries where they can be recycled. But we take that clear PET material and we run it through a very intensive wash cycle that basically takes the bottles and is grounded up into a flake form. And then we wash that. And then we run it through a decontamination process. And this is where we get back to the food contact FDA grade plastic that can be used for processing material back into another container or bottle. With that, the big difference in our process is we have the ability in that decontamination process to actually rebuild all the physical properties of the plastic. There's technical terms like molecular weight and intrinsic viscosity. We're able to boost those properties back up to more like virgin state of plastic, and then we can process it into new plastic to make new containers. And again, the big difference there being is that somebody will always ask me, well, how many times can this be recycled? Well, with this process of being able to boost all the physical properties back up to more of a virgin state, it's really infinite. We can do it over and over again. And that's, I think, probably the biggest technological breakthrough in the last several years of PET recycling.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, undoubtedly, 100%. And that's amazing. So let's talk a little bit about the different types of plastic, because, you're mentioning PET, and certainly, yes, I'm familiar with it, but I'm also familiar with these other plastic, the numbers that you see within the recycling symbol on various packages that are within, all households, mine, yours, most of our listeners. And that's, I'm thinking of numbers like number 5, number 2, number 7. What is the methodology behind those numbers? What do you want our listeners and consumers to know as it relates to the different types of plastics that are out there?
Yeah, as far as a consumer goes, in terms of, hey, what do I put in the recycling bin? What don't I? That sort of thing. I think the number system basically are codes for the type of plastic polymer. So I mentioned PET, which is polyethylene terephthalate is the technical term. That's the number 1, and that's probably the most recycled polymer that's out there today. Polypropylene is number 5, which is another one that is recycled quite a bit as well. HDPE is number 2. That's a high density polyethylene. That's what you see in a lot of laundry detergent containers and different things like that. And actually milk jugs is another material that you see that in. So basically these numbers are really a way for the reclaimers, what we call the MRFs, the material reclamation facilities, that take in the curbside collected materials, they sort them out by polymer, and then can send them to various value streams to try and have them recycled into other products. One of the things that I think is important to mention is that up until January of 2018, a lot of this non-PET was sent to China as part of a mixed, material bale, if you will. Sure. And they brought that material in, and as part of an initiative that they put forth by the government in China called the China Sort Initiative, they stopped taking those mixed bales. So it put a lot of pressure on the recyclers to find homes for those different polymers. So again, the numbering system of these materials is really a way for the handlers to understand how to sort them out and find ways to actually create value streams for recycling in the different polymers, because every polymer has a kind of a different characteristic on how it would be processed.
Right. And from what I've learned and what you've said so far, it sounds like PET plastic is what's used the most in fresh produce. Is that a true statement?
That's correct. Yeah, okay. PET is a great material for produce because it's very lightweight, it's clear, it's very durable. So there's many advantages that I definitely want to speak about in terms of PET. But one of the main things I think is as a result of the produce industry and how things are packed in the field to the transport all the way through the system to get it on a retailer shelf and ultimately home to a consumer, the actual clear nature of the material made it very easy to merchandise and to really, so people know what they're buying in terms of produce, which obviously is very important.
Right. And, I'm so glad you're on the show today because, plastic, I don't need to tell anyone, and I certainly don't need to tell you who works for our planet Earth. But plastics, from my perspective, it's like been demonized,
Yes.
and in society. And it is in the general consensus seems to be plastic is the problem, and I think that we really almost need to take a look with a wider lens, like a global lens, and understand that, globally, human beings buy 1 million plastic bottles per minute. I believe that's a stat that's actually on the rPlanet Earth website.
Correct.
So let's think about that for a second. There are so many parts of the world that depend on water and plastic bottles for a basic life necessity of clean drinking water. So we really can't demonize that, that is something that I believe all human beings agree on. Like, yes, clean drinking water is a life necessity. And it's, my hope, as well as, what I hope to be everyone listening to today's show's belief that human beings deserve that, And so let's talk a little bit about how, our planet Earth, when your concept, your operation, what you all stand for was brought to my attention by Nature Right Farms. It was really good timing because it was right after I had went on a trip to Costa Rica, where, there are some parts where water is totally fine to drink, but there's also a lot of parts where, bottled plastic or plastic bottled water is a necessity and it's used mainstream. And I want to talk about, from your perspective, talk for a minute about how plastic is not necessarily the problem. The problem lies in how we reuse it.
Yes. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's really one. If there's one thing I want your listeners to come away with, it's. I like to always say there's a lot of unintended consequences when we start thinking about different actions that we can take. Plastic is not the problem. I always like to say plastic waste is the problem, and essentially that's one of the founding, missions of our planet Earth was essentially the vision was zero plastic waste on our planet Earth. That's where the name came from. That's where everything came from. And of course, the little R in the our planet Earth was the recycle symbol. So, the whole point of plastic is it's so valuable in terms of providing safe, sanitary drinking water, beverages, and most importantly, fresh food.
Yeah.
The fact that it is cost effective, it's durable, it's clear, it's lightweight, so it transports easily, but it protects the food and beverage all the way along the supply chain to get again to the consumer's house. And I think the main issue for me has always been is that if we are not reclaiming this and turning it back into the same type of product, then we're really wasting a valuable resource. Because I can tell you right now, if we were to eliminate plastic from the produce industry, there would be some severe unintended consequences. One would be food waste. I think one of the most valuable things in our world that we can talk about is feeding the world.
Yes.
And the more we waste, and because we choose different packaging alternatives, could really have a huge impact on that. For me, on the produce side specifically though, what I look at is that one of the biggest problems in America today in terms of health and safety is obesity and diabetes and things of that nature. The produce industry has grown tremendously in the last 15 to 20 years, not only just because of the quality of the products that are coming out and everybody being a little more health conscious, but the fact that they were able to produce and transport this, the produce products in such a great material like plastic is really what's allowed that growth to happen. And I would hate to see prices skyrocket because produce growers and processors can't package the product, deliver it properly in a cost-effective manner, and you would see, all kinds of waste and purge, and it would degrade the shelf life. and things of that nature that would really impact the cost. And then all of a sudden now, the average consumer just says, well, I can't buy fresh produce anymore. It's too expensive. And they go back to, eating processed foods. So I think there's a lot of story behind all the unintended consequences. And the fact that this plastic is so valuable in terms of how we transport and protect food and beverage, there's got to be a way, and there is a way, to make sure that we preserve it and just take better care of it. So as I say, all the time, again, plastic's not the problem. It's the plastic waste that's the problem.
Yes.
And the focus really needs to be on the elimination of the waste, not on the elimination of the plastic.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. And I will say too, as someone who sat at the sales desk for over 10 years in the supply chain and was working, in a warehouse where we were moving literally hundreds of thousands of pounds of fresh produce on a daily basis. Just plastic is, it's part of fresh produce depends on this product. This fresh produce, as much as as America has been trained to expect all of their favorite food varieties in the fresh produce department on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And while we do have states, whether it's California or Georgia or, Texas, Florida, Michigan, that have great biodiversity and an ability to grow an abundant amount of specialty crops in both volume and variety, it is, at the end of the day, we have to import product from other parts of the world to have this 365-day availability of the fresh produce that we all know and love. There aren't too many American households that would be satisfied if they walked into a produce department, say in February, preparing for Valentine's Day, and there are no strawberries.
Right.
And that's the reality. If we can't have this type of packaging to help us not only move produce across our nation, but in and out of other countries as well. And that goes on both sides, because there are other parts of the world that certainly count on American farmers to get their fresh produce, throughout the calendar year. So, you got to think, I want our listeners to think for a moment, fresh produce must stay cold. That's what it means when we say, in the supply chain, you have to maintain the cold chain within the supply chain. So it has to stay cold. It has oftentimes certain commodities or varieties of produce, they're also, subject to staying damp. And so many of these produce items, they have to be packaged in a way that stands up to those cold and wet environments in which they are transported and stored. And I think that as an industry, we're yet to really see a product that can do that the way plastic can, all while protecting, maintaining the integrity of the food, so that we are standing by our commitment to reducing food waste within the supply chain and actually, turning around that number in America. I think even right now today, it's around 40% of what is grown is wasted. So, fresh produce depends on plastic. So I really want to emphasize your sentiments again, Dave. It's the plastic waste that is the problem. And so, your plant in Vernon, California is certainly proof and evidence that we can tackle plastic waste.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. In fact, one of the things that it's been interesting to me is that, when we talk about packaging, there's been a lot of, some of these other materials, whether they're fiber-based or paper-based, because of what you just mentioned about the cold and wet environment in many of the supply chain points for produce. It's just not very viable in terms of holding up and protecting the food and that sort of thing. And even if it is, composted or recycled, or it's a very I guess the fibers degrade. It's not very usable again, or it may only have that single life. Now, yes, it was disposed of properly and stayed out of the landfill. That's great. But I think the beauty of the PET plastic that's used in produce is that it's the best material right now to actually be converted back into to be used again. What I think really was interesting to me is the first 6 months I was at rPlanet Earth and I was talking to produce companies. Obviously a big hot button has been recycled content in the package. Okay, how much post-consumer recycled content is in your container, or how much recycled content is in your container? And then it really shifted because of a lot of the attacks, well, quite frankly, on single-use plastics, about, well, how are we going to get this reclaimed and how are we going to get this recycled? And to this point, there has been challenges in that, because in produce especially, a lot of people are using like a very aggressive adhesive with a paper label. Those are hard to remove from the plastic when you go through the recycling process. But there's been a lot of advances made there to really, kind of create this closed loop process, or what I like to call, creating a circular economy for plastic packaging, because everybody's addressing all the components of the package. Okay, how do we make this entire package, whether it's the label, the material, any tape, any sealant, anything like that can actually be addressed to be made more recycle friendly, so that when you're really designing the overall package and not just the actual rigid part of the container, but you're actually designing a finished good package really with its next life in mind. And I think that's probably the shift that I've seen in the last year or so, is that people are really starting to understand that we all have to kind of participate in it, whether we're the grower, the processor, the plastic container manufacturer, the recycler, the retailer, and the consumer. We all have to participate in making this circular economy or a closed loop process a reality. That was the big difference for me at Our Planet Earth, is they had taken all these different components of the, reclaiming the bales, grinding them and washing them and sorting them and turning them back into resin, and then turning that back into, an extrusion process that would make the plastic, and then take that plastic and make a container out of it. By putting that all under one roof, you really do have the ability to then have a closed loop process.
Right. And what you mentioned earlier, Dave, and that's also a loop that can continue on in a perpetual fashion if the process is done correctly.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. The biggest issue had been up to this point, I think, is that a lot of, people that were making, we'll call it post-consumer recycled PET resin, that might be used to, make a percentage of a preform, which is a little piece of the bottle that before it's blown into its shape. Those are injection molded processes that basically, they were using maybe 10% or 20%, post-consumer recycled resin in that, because they just really couldn't get the quality if they put too much in there to have it really act like virgin and have the physical properties to actually work in their process. But with this, type of technology that we've implemented, that's the thing. We can control the plastic itself and control the quality of the whole system. And again, the way we laid this out, the vision behind this by our co-founders, Bob Daviduke and Joe Ross, was really brilliant. And it took 8 years to build it and to come to fruition. But at the end of the day, we said, we're going to be a packaging company first that just happens to recycle and create its own resin. And by doing that, we're controlling all the processes all the way through. So quality all the way through to the finished good is controlled by us. We're not just making, a feedstock or a resin and selling off to somebody and say, okay, you guys do the rest. We're doing everything internally and trying to, control every aspect of that quality. So we kind of look at it this way. If I'm going to make a berry container, I know exactly what that berry container needs to do from a property standpoint, and I'm going to build my system and my whole recycling front end system around that end package, and kind of work backwards through the process to make sure that I'm controlling all the quality that goes all the way through. And that's probably the thing that people need to realize, is that there is a lot of investment going on in this kind of process. There needs to be more Our Planet Earths, quite frankly. Right. We are very well funded by two phenomenal investors that have really a long-term vision to build 3 or 4 more of these plants, so we can cover all the different regions of the United States, as well as really trying to get in, to the global markets. And we just kind of started with PET because it was the most readily available here in California, and to really, prove out our concept, it was the easiest thing to start with first. But Bob and Joe, the co-founders and co-CEOs, their vision has always been plastic waste in general. So as we start to, get this process down and really get a good volume going through on the PET side, we will definitely be exploring other polymers and getting into other plastics. And we're always open to new ideas in terms of the types of recycling that's out there. There's a lot of discussion about chemical recycling in plastic, which has some merit to it. It's very costly at this point, but it definitely has some merit. So there's all kinds of things going on in this industry that probably consumers mostly don't know about. to really bring this bring this recycling effort, to a much higher level.
Right. And, so let's talk a little bit more about where you're located. The rPlanet Earth, plant operation is in Vernon, California, which is, right outside of Los Angeles, south of Los
correct.
Angeles.
Yeah, just about 5 miles southeast of Los Angeles, the downtown. Right.
And so where do you pull your PET plastic from? Do you serve like that entire LA County area, or?
Well, actually, all of California, there's probably, 40 to 50 of these MRFs, these material reclamation facilities that we pull from. And actually, we're one of our key partners in terms of securing our feedstock is the PRCC, which is the Plastic Recyclers Corporation of California. It's a nonprofit organization that was, founded by some of the large producers. And basically what they do is they act as an agent to qualify and source all the different materials that we need through these various MRFs. Obviously, there's a spec set for a bale, about anywhere from 12 to 1,500 pound bale of compressed bottles and containers comes in to our facility. And they basically work with all the MRFs based on what our needs are. And we have a contract with them in terms of, making sure we have enough supply to feed our plant. And so they really are working with the whole state of California in terms of sourcing those materials. And as we become more and more advanced in terms of processing not just bottles, but containers, these what we call thermoform containers, that again have been a little harder to recycle because of the labels and different things like that. As we improve our process, we've seen some great results there. There's an abundance of that feedstock available to process. Up to this point, people have had trouble doing that, and we're doing a really good job of that. So we're just feeling like, wow, we're really going to be opening up another value stream for recyclers, and instead of them kind of sorting those away from the bottles because some people don't want any part of that. We're actually going to be creating another value stream, for what people are putting in their curbside.
Right. That's amazing. And when you talk about your outputs at rPlanet Earth, obviously, as we were introduced through Nature Ripe and through some of the dialogue that you've shared today, it sounds like the berry containers, or what we call in the industry clamshells, that's one of the products that you manufacture at rPlanet Earth. What other products are you guys making?
We have just started really getting into all different various types of PET packaging. Primarily what you'll see would be like deli containers, salad trays, or, salad containers. Things for bakeries such as, hinge containers for, muffins and cookies and different things like that. We're really in the early stages of developing a lot of different products. Right now, we primarily work with customers very closely in terms of designing, packages for their specific products. Eventually, we'll probably launch, what I would call more universal or some stock product lines in those categories. But right now, we've kind of focused in on, I would say that fresh deli, fresh produce, and bakery. But there's a lot of other opportunities on our preform side. We also have this, preform injection molding process, which is basically making a little precursor to a bottle. And so for beverage bottles and also for home care, shampoo bottles, things of that nature. That industry really, needs people like us that can actually produce high quality, 100% recycled content. And, they're using some right now, but again, as I mentioned earlier, some of the challenges in the quality side is they've only been able to put a certain amount in of recycled content. And with the processes that we've built now, people are looking at, hey, how do I get that bottle to 100% recycled content? And how do we get it back again and reprocess it over and over again? So there's a lot of strides being made, in that area as well. So from a product standpoint, it's really going to be where our customers take us, but it'll be in those preform categories and the thermoform container categories. And we also do sell roll stock. So we basically extrude, the plastic into a bigger roll of plastic that a thermoformer would use to make containers or clamshells. And we have some strategic partners there as well, where we will supply material to them to try and, again, really get this material out into the market.
Great.
We don't mind
You sell
competition.
like the raw product as well as,
exactly.
Yeah.
We don't mind competition. We want to really help, get people involved and more people invest in this kind of technology.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, my big takeaway as I've learned a lot in today's episode, which I knew I would. I was very, very excited about our conversation today, Dave. I'm really right now in a state of, amazement and also, just a little bit of invigoration, because I feel like there's so much hope here. And I feel like there really is, like, the sky is the limit in how we can tackle and turn around the plastic waste problem across the globe. It's not just in the United States, but around the world. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like anything, right? That when the technology exists, now you need money. And I know that's what, obviously is one of the biggest, barriers for anybody to invest in this kind of technology. It's very expensive, but there's a lot of groups out there now that are funding. And I think, even some of the larger retailers are investing in groups and funds that are fueling investment in this area. I know, the state of California was very generous with rPlanet Earth, and not grants or money like that, but as far as financing programs at low interest costs, just to get things moving, invested in some of the equipment that we dialed in, because we definitely wanted to go state of the art and use the latest technology. So there's been a lot of people getting behind that. Obviously, that's going to need to continue for others and to follow. And our first plant here, we basically built it big enough to put in another complete line next to it. So I think the capacity of material that we could make in the first phase here is about 75 million pounds. But if we can build our second line, it's like 1.5 times bigger. So we'd be, nearing anywhere from like 150 to 180 million pounds in one facility. And you start replicating that in different facilities across the country and get recycle rates up in the various categories in the states, and get more people, the consumers, to recycle. There's going to be, we're going to be able to end this problem. Like I said, it's every year I think we make progress, but the goal is to eliminate it for sure.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love your passion. I love what you do. And that's the exact type of thing that we try to showcase here on the Produce Moms podcast, are folks that are really doing work that matters the most and truly advancing the produce industry in all sorts of different ways. And rPlanet Earth and the work that you do on a daily basis, Dave, is certainly part of that. So thank you for being our guest today. And, we have a tradition at the podcast. Our guests always get to close out the show and have the last word. But before you do that, I definitely want to make sure and remind you to tell our listeners where they can go to learn more about rPlanet Earth. Sure. And, just so thankful you were part of today's show, Dave.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, Lori. Our website, www.rplanetearth.com, is where you go to find out about our vision, and there's industry information as well. But I think the one thing I would hone in on is that there's an Our Story tab. Definitely click on that tab, because that kind of tells you the story of how Bob and Joe had this vision and what they've gone through to bring this to fruition. And the other thing I want to mention too is that this is a great place to work. I mean, everybody is working for a cause. I always like to say this is not a nonprofit organization by any means, but we're capitalists. We're capitalists with the cause, though. There's nothing that says that you can't, make money doing the right thing, and that's what everybody here is all about. And I would check out that's been one of our better recruiting tools, I think, for factory workers and different things in our facility. Using the website and really telling our story, and the culture here is amazing. And I'm just so thankful to be, part of it, especially after, 30 plus years in the industry. I always tell my daughters, that, hey, this packaging business I've been in, maybe I screwed up the planet a little bit, but maybe the next 10 years I'll fix it. How's that sound? And so that's how I'm going to approach things from now on.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Produce Moms Podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a featured guest, just send an email to Lori@theproducemoms.com. We know there is a produce mom in you because there's a produce mom in all of us. Join our community on Facebook and all social platforms. Help us change the way America eats. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.